Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Anime-Zing Radio here on YouTube. As a reminder, Anime-Zing Radio is brought to you tonight by Home Circle Media. For the latest and greatest in anime gear, everything from pens, pencils, stationery, and officially licensed art books, be sure to check out homecirclemedia.com today or look for them at an upcoming convention near you. We're also brought to you tonight by KC Fox for all of your artwork, cosplay, and photography needs. Be sure to check out KC Fox, that's KAYCIFOXX, on Facebook and Instagram. We're also brought to you tonight by Darren.
Yes, if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area and you need lawn and landscaping services, give me a call.
We are excited tonight. I'm your host, Doug Engler. Joining me, as always, is our wonderful co-hosts, Angela and Darren.
Hello.
Hello.
And we're doing a special show here on a Monday night. We have a fantastic guest. Shawn Hainsworth is joining us to promote a new comic he's got coming out. He's got a Kickstarter that's going on for another week or two, or another week it looks like. And thank you so much for joining us, Shawn.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Now, for our viewers out there who may not know you or your product, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so let's see. I grew up in New England area, and I did a lot of film when I was younger. So I made a lot of I made a bunch of documentary films in the 90s, and then I did some screenwriting and that sort of thing. And then when I had my kids, I kind of stopped doing a lot of that stuff and got serious. And then recently I got back into it, and I decided to start working in comic books instead of on screen. And I kind of never looked back. I really I've hooked up with a couple different artists, and we now have 3 books in production, and just kind of full speed ahead and really enjoying it. So the one that's live right now on Kickstarter is The Killing Machine. It's up for another 7 days. It is a sort of thoughtful, action-packed sci-fi that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in more detail. And then after that, I've got a comedy of horrors called Woodstake about a vampire at Woodstock. And then after that, we've got kind of a comedy called Erotic, which is like The Office with sex robots. So we got three lined up and ready to go.
The Office with sex robots.
Yeah, that's a little naughty.
that sounds like some of the anime you two have described.
It more focuses on the dysfunction of the office workers in the context of. So it really means to be comic and not
animated.
Yeah.
No, I'm just poking fun at them, but
I don't know how much of the anime world you're familiar with, Shawn, but Darren and I have a very similar taste in anime, including what's called isekai, which is basically being summoned or somehow transformed into another world, whether it's be summoned, get sucked in through a video game, whether you get hit by Truck-kun and reincarnated in another world. That's all considered isekai when you somehow end up in another place.
Cool.
And
yeah, I have to say I am not that familiar with the anime world, so apologies to all of your Anime-Zing guests here tonight.
That's okay. We enjoy jumping out. I've been doing the show for about 8 years, and we've had many comic creators on. Even though I'm not very knowledgeable about comics, I love the creativity that goes into the comic world and the stuff that you guys come up with, plus being able to help promote different comics. And I don't know if you know Johnny C, but we're good friends with him. He's a comic creator as well. And
yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. And actually, I my first exposure to anime was when I was a kid. The Star Blazers TV series was on like all the time when I was a kid. The Battleship Yamamoto, I think is what it's called. But yeah, I was sort of aware of a lot of the animation style that was going on, but I didn't dig as much into print anime.
Now, what got you into wanting to create comics?
Just like a lot of people, just wanting to be a storyteller and collecting stories over the years. Really, like I said, kind of transitioning out of thinking about things more in terms of screenplays. It's I think what's great about the comic world is that you have, full creative control, that these things are possible to make, and realize your vision for the story. And I also love pairing up with the artists, collaboratively, because so I really focus on the stories, but then I have 3 really different looks for these 3 stories that we're developing. And so that's kind of exciting, is to just see how this story gets filtered through these different, these different artists' visions. And it's really, really exciting. It's just a great process for me.
Now, the comic we're focusing on a lot tonight that you have the Kickstarter going for is The Killing Machine.
Yeah.
What was the thought process into creating The Killing Machine?
Yeah, so this all started about 10 years ago. I had the idea. I was just watching like way too many samurai movies from the 50s and 60s, and just got really deep into that whole thing. And I came up with the idea of sort of a robotic ronin, or a robot warrior that became a masterless samurai, and was just kind of wandering the galaxy searching for purpose. And that was the origin of the character Richter. The story has evolved a lot since then. It doesn't really have too much samurai influence in the overall narrative, but that was the original idea for it. My day job, I work in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and so I'm really interested in how what we talk about as human level performance in artificial intelligence or in robotics. So the idea that motivates the beginning of the script is, what creates the spark of life? If we have robots that can function like human beings and algorithms that can think like human beings, that's not really sufficient to call something alive. But where is that spark of life? And that's the idea that kind of kicks off the series. But from there, it's very, it's really action packed. It's the main character Richter is a commander in charge of a crew of soldiers that are on, a mission whose purposes get revealed as the issues move along. That's how it all started out, was just wanting to tell this kind of, exciting sci-fi story that has its origins in this concept of, of life and what makes life, either artificial life, and eventually that whole kind of thing kind of circles around to the larger narrative as we get into it. So it's currently planned out as 7 issues for a book 1 and 7 issues for a book 2. And I've written, I originally wrote it as a novel way back when. The Masterless Samurai version was a novel, and then I wrote it as a screenplay. So I've been over the story a lot, and have, I hope, what I think is a good arc for both book 1 and book 2.
That's cool. Do you find it more entertaining or more enjoyable to write it as a comic as opposed to a screenplay or a novel? Or
yeah, absolutely. I'm not the best prose writer in the sense of, I think I'm more interested in character action and dialogue than I am in description. I have a hard time banging out pages in a novel. It's hard for me to generate a lot of prose. I tend to work more slowly. The thing about a screenplay is that a screenplay, it isn't anything, right? It doesn't exist on its own. It's not like a novel that you can pick up and read. And nobody reads screenplays for fun. They're just templates for someone else to take and make a movie out of them. And today, even more so, I think, than previously, the screenwriter is not really even supposed to put too much visual direction in there, right? That's not your job. Your job is to come up with the story, the characters, and the dialogue, and let the director and the cinematographer figure out where the camera goes and what it's going to look like. So they actually don't want you to write or overwrite, visual directions. So I find the comic book really satisfying, both in terms of boiling the story down, or even a scene down, to the page and the panel level. I think it's really, you have to be very rigorous about what you show and what you don't show, right? Because the time between 2 panels, it could be, a second, or it could be, 5 minutes, right? The audience has to be able to infer what's happened between the panels. And so you have to really choose your moments very carefully. And you have to choose your dialogue very carefully, because you don't want to cover up all this great artwork with, too much blah, 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 blah. So I actually think it's great. It's really rigorous. Like, you have to boil your story down, your scene down to its essence, find the best way, to visualize that panel to panel, and then, strip it back and let the art tell the story as much as possible. So I think it's a great process. I really like it. I find it challenging for that reason.
Awesome. And Angela, I know you said that you're new getting into the world of comics, and you prefer in the indie comics as opposed to some of the mainstream ones. Is there anything that he's been talking about with this comic that's jumped out at you?
I like science fiction as a whole. So just the premise alone has me very intrigued.
Good to hear.
Much like yourself. I mean, I love like a lot of the classic science fiction. I do love my classic samurai movies.
Yeah, and a lot of the sci-fi that I like, I really like some of the more thoughtful kind of, quote unquote cerebral science fiction. So, it's definitely channeling some Arthur C. Clarke, some Philip K. Dick, that kind of thing. That's what I really like about sci-fi, is that you can, as in fantasy or other genres, you can create, worlds and characters and scenarios, kind of whatever your imagination can come up with. But sci-fi always has, or often has, that extra dimension of, the nature of life, the nature of time, some more, kind of thoughtful component to it. And I really, really like that about science fiction. And that's what I read growing up, a lot of that stuff.
Growing up, I too read a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite TV shows as a teenager was The X-Files.
Yep. Yeah, that show was amazing in its ability to constantly tease the narrative and continue to pull you along without giving you the big, satisfying payoff, and it really was just a remarkable feat of writing. I think that those characters in these situations, that they could always pull you along and pull you along and pull you along without giving you some, the large payoff that people wanted. And I think a lot of shows try to do that a lot less successfully than the X-Files did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the Kickstarter, what are some of the perks that people can find by helping you with the Kickstarter?
Yeah, so actually the great thing is we've unlocked one stretch goal, and we're like 2 backers away from unlocking another one. So that will unlock. And that means that any level, you're going to get 2 additional PDFs for free. So we're going to also include issue 1 of Fractured Shards, which is kind of a quantum science fiction story. It's a 48-page sci-fi comic that's done quite well, and actually just wrapped up its Kickstarter on issue 2. So that's great. And we're also including Frank Forte's War Lash. Frank Forte was associated with Heavy Metal magazine and all that for a while. So at any level, you're going to get 3 digital comics, which is pretty nice, then, we've got the print comics. We've got a lot of the typical swag. We've got stickers, and actually I've put together a Spotify playlist of robot tunes throughout the ages, which I think will be fun. I've got some really nice journals for writers or illustrators. There's a hardback journal with the SHP logo on it, the comic logo, and then there's a soft-bound, really nice soft-bound journal with the Killing Machine graphics on it. So yeah, there's some good stuff out there, and just trying, sign sketches from the artist. That's the other one, but trying to encourage people and give things that are fun and collector's items. We've also got a behind the scenes booklet. So it talks about how some of the scenes were put together, shows drawings and notes and how scenes evolved from idea or even from the screenplay. Sometimes I'll include the screenplay write-up of a scene and then go through the various iterations of how it was drawn until we got to the final scene. So I think that'll be fun for people as well.
Now, with some of the other comics that you're working on, did you work on them one at a time, or did you? I'm going to work a little bit on the Killing Machine, then I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to work a little on this one, and then jump back. Or
yeah, part of this was that I had just collected a lot of stories over the years. So erotic was first a short story, about an 8,000 word short story, and then 150 pages of a novel. So it was just kind of like, all right, now let's. I want to bring that one out and find an artist and develop that one. And Woodstake, the same thing. I had been working on, the story for a while. I had done a couple versions of the screenplays. So it wasn't, I have a lot of material. I still have more stories and things that I've developed over the years that are ready to come out when I have more bandwidth. But it was really just a question of picking the ones that I was most excited about, and that I could find artists that I thought were a good fit for, and then adapting them as we go. And it's kind of fun to work serially, right? So you do issue 1 and then you get all the feedback, doing the shows, doing the Kickstarter, talking to people at conventions, getting reviews on an individual issue. You get a lot of feedback, which is great. And then you can take that and try to, put that into issue 2. So unlike, a novel or whatever, I don't have to write the whole thing at once. I have a good sense of the story over time, but I can continue to develop it issue by issue. And so it was really just taking these 3 projects out of mothballs and getting them started, getting those first issues going. And that's what I've been focusing on.
And I think that's an interesting thing about especially indie comic creators who do conventions. And, granted, conventions are starting to come back post-pandemic, and people are starting to get back out there with their comics and things. You mentioned that it's critical to get the feedback from the fans, because then you're able to cater the storyline. Even though you have a base storyline, you can add or subtract things that you think from the knowledge you're getting of your readers where they'd like to see the storyline go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a writer, it's good to get out of your own head. Right. It's sometimes you just get trapped in your own idea, and then maybe you'll just have a conversation with someone and it'll spark another idea, or maybe I need to develop this more, or, oh, this could come in this way, And so, yeah, I love it. It's not like, oh, I'm writing this for myself and, I'm expressing myself, and it's a science fiction story. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be engaging. You want to get feedback from the people that like these kind of stories. So yeah, absolutely.
Now, Ange, you said that you like the sci-fi genre as well. What are some of the things about sci-fi that really piques your interest?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things. Like I mentioned, I like the bigger ideas that underpin some of these stories. I've been reading, Cixin Liu's, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the 3-body problem, which kind of has this, the core idea is that, Earth is sending these messages out into space. And at one point we get a message back saying, do not send another message in this direction. My planet is aggressive, but they will come take you over. Right. And that's just kind of a really cool idea. What if we heard something back, and what if it was, don't do that again. And of course someone does it again. Right. But, so I think there's that. I also love the idea of kind of predicting future technologies, trying to imagine how technology impacts our life, in deeper ways. I mean, where are we going with robotics? What will robotics look like in 20 years or 50 years? This is set in 2073. That's always like kind of the hard thing in sci-fi. Like, where do you set it? How far in the future? And I don't want it to be 25th century, because that's just, nobody can even begin to predict what that would be like. So 50 years in the future is good, because you have some leeway, to kind of guess and predict things. Actually, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to point out, we have our first comment of the night, and
Awesome.
And HH is asking if you were talking about Asimov.
Oh, I didn't mention Asimov. I was mentioning, and I was mentioning Arthur C. Clarke earlier, but Asimov as well. I mean, with the whole robot series, I mean, he's the one who defined, the rules of robotics and all of that. So I should have mentioned Asimov, and I apologize for not mentioning Asimov, because if you're going to write a robot story, then you are channeling Isaac Asimov, whether you like it or not. And I like it. I mean, I think Asimov is great.
Now, one cool thing that I've discovered, and I'm not a big comic book person. I've never delved big into the comic world, but I know so many people who are comic creators, going to so many conventions in the New England area, and getting to meet independent comic creators like yourself. And when they find out, oh, I do a podcast and I do promote anybody who, like, somebody finds out I do a podcast, and they're like, here's a free comic, check it out and see if you want to have us on. And a lot of times I'll bring them on. I do read the comics that I get from people who generously donate one to us, which I don't do this to get free swag. That's not why I do the show. Just anybody who thinks that I do this to get free stuff, I've declined autographs from voice actors for free, just because I know that's how they make their livelihood. I would rather support you by promotions if I can't support financially. And that's just how I do the show. That's how I am personally. And seeing the creative minds and the different types of comics out there, when you're not working on the sci-fi side of things, are there other genres of comics that you enjoy reading?
Yeah, and actually, just to go wider, I think what's great about the comic world is that, in Hollywood television, there are these gatekeepers, right? Because it costs a ridiculous amount of money, and you have to have a certain, you have to be able to produce a television show. And so there are gatekeepers, and there's been, over the years, we want more of these kinds of stories, or, whatever. And it's very hard, it's hard to move that needle in terms of what gets made. But in the comic world these days, it's amazing. Like, you can go, and the barrier to entry is low enough. I mean, at the lowest, if you can draw and write, then it's your time, right? So people are doing all kinds of stories, like anything, and you meet these people at the conventions, and it's like, it's just great. I mean, the last Comic-Con, just people doing, wrestling comics, or just any, you can pick any subgenre, and there's someone doing it and finding their audience and finding their tribe. And I think that's really amazing. For me, yeah, I like, I like the genres that I'm doing in a way. I like sci-fi. I like horror with an asterisk next to it. And I like comedy. The asterisk next to horror is, once again, I kind of like more thoughtful or playful horror. I'm more of a Shaun of the Dead kind of person, or a, Exorcist kind of person, or The Omen, to go into the movie realm where there's an idea behind it rather than just, somebody with a knife slashing people up. I want a little more, it's something else going on other than just trying to get, having the bejesus scared out of you,
Yeah.
I like good stories, I like good ideas, I like good characters that support all of that.
What do you think, Darren? I'll throw him on the spot if he's still there.
I bored him. He's gone.
Yeah. I'm still here.
What are your thoughts on the comic world, Darren?
I don't really pay attention to the comic world, so I can't really comment on it. Growing up, I really wasn't interested in comics. By that point, a lot of my generation in the early 2000s was more on certain series of books pointed out in the library. The Harry Potter series, the Charlie Bones series, stuff like that was more targeted towards my generation, I guess you could call it. And that's really what I remember. If it hadn't have been for my friend showing me into anime, I probably wouldn't have ever really thought about much of the comic world, because after just looking at manga, and of course other comics in general at that point, because you go to the few shops we had, and most of them were comic that recently started carrying manga. And I think the only comics I ever really owned were, believe it or not, some of the first comics from Pokemon. I think it was the first four where they did a totally different spin on the main characters. So as far as like Marvel, DC, any of the mainstream comics, I know absolutely nothing about them. It was just never my wheelhouse.
Same here. I did not. Don't fall into the Superman, Spider-Man, that stuff. The people who love it, it's wonderful to see how popular it is. Me personally, after like 4,000 superhero movies, I'm tired of just like hearing about them.
Yeah, you're not tired of isekai.
And it's funny. My husband is actually the one who reads all the comics. And so he's been slowly introducing me to some based on my taste in media. And then he'll go and he will find copies of like the trade paperbacks and then buy them for me and I'll read them. Like I have the box set of Lock and Key. I also have other that aren't necessarily mainstream per se. And Lock and Key, we watched the Netflix show, absolutely loved it. And then he's like, you realize this is a comic? And I'm like, no. So he went and bought it for me.
Yeah, I just got that from my son. Same thing. We watched it on TV and he was really intrigued by it. I think what brought me into comics was just how visually sophisticated some of the storytelling is. And I think a lot of that, comes from manga. The sophistication of the storytelling is unbelievable. And, a lot of the independence of the 70s, but also, you got to give credit where credit is due. I mean, the Marvel artists, the DC artists, they did an amazing job developing a visual language, whether or not you like those kinds of stories. But I find, just the style of storytelling. The first one that grabbed me was Watchmen, just the opening. I don't know if you know the opening of it, kind of a yellow shape with a red shape on it, and then it slowly pulls back and it's a yellow smiley button with a blood stain, and the camera or the view pulls all the way back, and it really intrigued me, and I think that's what pulled me into it, was just how cool the visual storytelling was.
Now, curiosity, because at conventions I've not only seen the actual comic book artists but also the web comic artists. What's your thoughts on the web comics versus the actual physical comic books, and what would you say is...
I'm dating myself. I was born in 66, so I'm a print person, but the world has just changed, right? So it used to be that comic books were sold at newsstands and there were comic book stores. They were sort of ubiquitous, and you would have a comic book in your hand. These days I just think there's so many alternatives, and people enjoy reading on their devices. They have no problem with it. I don't mind reading on my device. I'm more comfortable with a physical object in my hand. I think that just dates me. I think that's just my generation. So I think, once again, the more outlets and the fewer gatekeepers, the better, right? So, I mean, if you can get people to look at your stuff anywhere, and find people who like your stuff and encourage you, and you can find an audience, that's awesome. It shouldn't have to be that you have to, get past one of the gatekeepers or do something that's more traditional in order to get seen. So I'm all for it. I just a little bit of an old coot who wants a physical object,
I think there's a lot of people out there who would rather have the physical objects, and I liken that to the gaming world, where you can go to the store, buy a physical copy of a video game, or you can have on your gaming system, download it.
I'd rather have the physical copy.
I would rather have the physical copy for most of them.
Yeah, because the physical copies usually come, if nothing else, the jacket had if nothing else, one, what happens when your device dies?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And two, at least some of the older ones would come with a little book that, if nothing else, had pretty pictures.
Yeah.
Yes.
If not a synopsis of what you were getting.
When I got my Game Boy, and when I was in elementary school, I think I was in 5th grade for my parents finally got one. So this is 2005, 2006. Yeah, I know. They took away my games for a while because of something stupid I did, but instead of playing the games, I actually opened the boxes and would read the little manuals that came with them. And basically, it was the character guide, the synopsis guide, and I'm like, okay, this isn't the game, but it's interesting to go ahead and learn about everything I'm going to be facing in the game. Wasn't quite a game guide, but at the same time, it was enough to pass the time until I could get my stuff back.
And HH is actually commenting, the only problem that they have with books is the ease at which they can be found in stores, as many bookstores have migrated and downsized. And I 100% will agree with that.
Yeah.
I can agree to that as well.
Because I would like to support the smaller stores,
but they're getting harder and harder to find.
But unfortunately, it's like for more of the geek stuff that I like, it either has to be Newbury Comics or, I hate to say, Amazon.
Yeah, and it's hard as a creator because you can't sell a single issue via the mail because, when you add in shipping, it's just too much for a single issue, right? I'm talking $8-9 for the issue plus the shipping. I mean, it gets better when you can pack 3 issues or 5 issues into the same, one and make your stuff available. But yeah, I totally agree. It's very hard to get a physical object out there.
And as shipping and receiving is part of my day job, I will say they're also trying to change what does and does not count as media. And I actually had an artist friend get double charged for their shipping costs because a graphic book did not count as media.
Wow. Since when?
I have no idea, and I was shocked to learn that. But apparently, since the post office is basically bankrupt.
Yeah.
Are they really though?
The post office has lost a lot of money, and basically they're trying to crack down on what does and doesn't count as media. Because typically books and media cost a lot less to ship than everything else.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy to see how things have changed and progressed over time. Like you were talking about, Shawn, the way that artists, comic creators, anime, whatever it may be, has changed over time and tried to adjust with the way that the world has gone. Are you finding it? A, have you been to a convention since the pandemic? And B, if you have, how have you felt the attendance and the exception has been of comic creators, artists going to these shows by the fans who come to check them out?
Yeah, so I only went to one. I went to Comic-Con in October. And that was a good time because that was after Delta, when Delta was fading before we knew about Omicron. And they required everyone to be vaccinated and masked. And that didn't seem to bother people. They were out, cosplay was out, everybody was out having a great time. The convention floor was packed. And, that's the place to get physical objects, is the best place to get physical objects, is just to go to a convention because, especially if you are near a large convention like that where, you can pick up all kinds of stuff without shipping charges and show specials and everything else. But that's the only one I went to, and it was a really good experience. Fingers crossed, we're going in that direction again. Numbers coming down, as we head into March and April. So, I was mentioning before we started, I'm going to one in March, and I hope that'll be, people will feel comfortable to have a good time.
And I am tossing around the idea in my head of driving out to that same convention, you were talking about. It's the Northeast Comic Con in Boxborough on March 11th through 13th. For those of you interested, yes, you've heard me talk about Northeast Comic Con on the past in the show because it is the convention my wife and I got married at. We are friends with Gary Summers. I haven't been to any of his shows since we moved from Massachusetts to New York, so it'd be fun to go back and see a lot of friends that we have that go to his shows and to see Gary again. So I might make the trek out there. I'm not sure yet.
That'll be great. Well, I've got a booth, so stop by Artist Alley and I'll be there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk Ange into driving out that way too.
For me, that's not that far. That's more of a life, the universe, everything kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And
Darren, I don't think would make it up.
I don't think so either. I can barely make it to Anime-Zing nowadays, but because of work, and especially during the summertime, cutting my day job at this point isn't the problem. It's going to be cutting my own business, which is the problem, because in the heat of summer, that gets really hard really quick.
Oh, yeah.
Especially because I don't trust anybody else to run my business. Or if I did, I still don't want to lose out on that revenue.
I can understand that.
Totally. Excuse me.
Now, going through the Kickstarter for The Killing Machine, for those of you out there who are listening, as we mentioned earlier, there are a bunch of different levels, including, I see you have here recruit, crew member, security officer, lieutenant. How did you come up with the different ranks for the different pledge amounts?
Yeah, so it's it's definitely got a military feel to it, in the sense of the the crew that is on this mission is a military crew. So there's all the standard ranks. So I just kind of moved up the ranks. The robotic character we're talking about is the captain of the mission, and the other main character is the lieutenant of the mission, and the admiral is a big character as well. Actually, one other influence that sneaks in there, I'm a big fan of the Horatio Hornblower novels by C.S. Forster, which are all set during the Napoleonic Wars, and kind of like a Master and Commander scenario. And so there's a reference to the Admiral from that series. But yeah, I just kind of moved up the ranks for the different tiers.
And I've never done anything with Kickstarter before. We do have a Patreon. If any of our listeners out there want to help support our show, Anime-Zing Radio, just go to the link that you see below my name, type that into your browser, and feel free to help support us. All proceeds are going to be going towards new equipment and to help future AZR progress. And it's neat to see how Kickstarter has been able to help so many creators like yourself, whether it's for comics, games, TV, movies, even animation, whether it's cartoons or anime or whatever it may be. How has your experience been with Kickstarter? Has it been easy to use for those who might be interested in doing something through Kickstarter?
It has been easy to use. I'm amazed by Kickstarter as well too. I mean, it just shows the kind of generosity of people and people's desire to be a part of something in a more meaningful way, right? So someone can buy a comic cheaper than they can contribute to a comic on Kickstarter. But people like to hear about the people who are making it, and they like to be a part of it, and get the inside story and all of that. What I would say, the site itself is very easy to use. I would just say the key thing, I think, to a successful Kickstarter is just doing a lot of work in advance, right? You want to come out of the gate strong. You want to circle up your friends and family, and you want to develop those contacts wherever you have them of people who might be interested, and do all of that in advance, because depending on how long your campaign goes, they go pretty fast. I can't believe we're down to 7 days. So, it takes a lot of work up front, but technically it's easy to do. You just want to tell a good story, and be honest and genuine. I think that's why people give. They want to give to a project they they believe in. It's funny, in my house, we have all these games. We have all these crazy family games. And, I realized that we have all these crazy family games with a Kickstarter. Like, there's so many games on the market that just got a Kickstarter, and now they're out there. And we have a whole bunch of them. We play with our kids all the time. So
I do apologize about walking away there for a moment. My wife just got home from work, and the door was locked, so I had to unlock the door and let her in. And
yeah.
Oops.
Especially when it's below freezing.
Yeah. Well, we're above freezing up here right now. Not by much, but actually it says 32, so we're right at the freezing mark. But we're at least in the positives, which is, nice for this area, considering the fact that not 2-3 weeks ago we had negative 19 temperature.
Wow.
And that was pre-wind chill.
I was going to say, you had negative temperatures. I had a foot of snow.
Yeah.
I had 3 inches of snow.
Now I have a foot of snow. Your snow is melting. And
Yep.
I got nothing. I just got a whole bunch of rain today. I mean, it was rainy and 30, low to mid 30s all day.
Now, switching gears a little bit to some of the other comics, Woodstake, you were talking about, is the next one that you're looking at putting out there. What was some of the idea into the creation of that?
Yeah, I think the aha moment for me on that one, aside from just the fun of the title, was the idea. The Woodstock, in 1969 was just so relentlessly optimistic, and there's nothing kind of more cynical than a vampire, right? Something that just feeds off of other beings and leaves a path of destruction in its wake. And I just really loved the idea of a vampire coming into contact with this, community of incredibly optimistic young people at the height of this movement of their generation. And that was the kind of that was the idea that motivated it. And it's also just there's a lot of room for comedy in there. So of course the vampire feeds on somebody who's just dropped LSD, and so now the vampire's tripping, and there's a lot of references. Actually, I was very specific at the festival about who was playing when and where things were, and I really tried to make it fit into the festival. I didn't move anything around. I made the story fit the festival. And also, it's as a classic vampire story, and it really is kind of a classic vampire story with the setting, but it's great because you had 3 days of the festival. So, which means you've got, 3 nights of terror and 3 days of what's going on in the festival. So it just kind of worked out. That one did quite well as a screenplay. In fact, I was down at the Austin Film Festival. It was selected for as a second rounder down there, and Austin's a great festival for screenwriters. They have a conference where you can meet all kinds of people and everything else. I even got a staged reading of the first 6 pages of Woodstake, so that was really fun. But I think the idea just kind of jumped out at me, and then it was one of those writing projects where it just kind of fell into place. Like sometimes you have an idea and you think it's a good idea, and then you try to write it and it can't make it work. But this one was the opposite. It was just kind of fun to write, and I was cracking myself up and having a good time with it. So
now, as a creator of comics, do you find that there are times when you'll be writing a story and you just think of something that just either catches you off guard and you're surprised by how well it just came out, or you write something and you start laughing at what you just wrote and it just turns your giggle box, and you're sitting there for 15 minutes laughing at the stupidest thing that you just created and you don't even know if it's going to stay?
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's what my wife is for, because I'll be, like, I had this amazing idea, this is hilarious. And I'll tell her, and I can tell immediately in her reaction whether it's actually funny or not actually that funny. And that's what I mean about getting out of your own head, right? You have to be open enough to let those creative juices flow, but you also can't be, you don't want to be critical of yourself, but you also can't be, relentlessly kind of self-indulgent, right? Like this is ultimately got to hold together for somebody else. So I do always want to kind of get that feedback. yeah, I find the writing process really fun in that way. And, I will sometimes do dialogue out loud and sometimes crack myself up. And it's a little pathetic, but there it is.
And as a comic creator, what is especially for anybody out there who's listening and who may want to create their own comics, but they're not artistic, what are some of the processes that you go through in finding an artist that you feel comfortable working with on your stories?
Yeah, so it's a great time for that and this is where the internet is amazing, right? So people are posting web comics and pages and, here's my daily Spider-Man and here's my latest drawing and here's what I'm into. And, there are, just the comic book, the subreddits and the Facebook groups and this and that. So there's just a whole lot of people out there with a lot of artistic talent who would be interested in getting hooked up on a project. I mean, it always ultimately comes down to money, right? So can you pay someone or can you sell them on your vision so that they become a partner and you take the risk together? So there's always a practical component to it. But I think finding someone who shares your vision, it's really just a question of getting out there. I think going to a Comic-Con and walking down Artist Alley is a great way to do that. I mean, that's what I did, is I just got cards of everybody I thought their drawings were cool. And, as you meet people and talk to people and people know other people and, it's like anything, it's just getting yourself out there and meeting people and looking at stuff. But as, cause I have zero artistic talent for creating something with paper and pencil, so it can be done, and actually once again it's great because it takes you outside of yourself. It becomes a collaboration, and the artist will do things that you never thought of, particularly in Killing Machine. Michel Fortin, who's the artist, he has an amazing sense of technology. Like, he just loves inventing machines and spacecraft and computers and, devices. And so, I'll write something, like Richter is jacked into the computer and he'll come up with this like design with this very complex, wiring and, stuff on the monitor and, all this detail. And it's just fantastic to have somebody else take it and build it out like that.
That is so cool. And I agree, going to conventions, whether it be an anime con, a Comic-Con, go through, and I recommend this to everybody if you get to a convention, go through Artist Alley and see the work that these people do. And you will be amazed by the creations that they come up with, not just fan art of some of your favorite anime characters. Lord knows I've got plenty of that around my house.
And HH is adding, you can even attract artists with a compelling story, as many webcomics read. As many they've read were illustrated with essentially stick figures, but gained a following anyway.
That's a great point. HH, how come you're not here talking instead of me? You're wicked. You got you get that kid on the show or the person on the show. I don't even know who they are, but yeah.
That's one thing that I really appreciate about our fan base is we have a very knowledgeable fan base, especially when it comes to the guests that we bring on. And I have for the last almost 8 years. We turn 8 April. And I've always said, if you can find them at a comic or an anime convention, I want to have them on the show, whether it's a cosplayer, an artist, a comic creator, a voice actor. It doesn't matter. Gamers, even the conventions themselves we've had on the show, because I enjoy promoting and uplifting people, because there's not enough of that in the world, I feel. Plus, I like the fact we have a very laid-back improv type show. I've seen too many talk shows that are like attack. Okay, I have a list of 10 questions. We've got to go through them. And it's like boom, 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 boom. I don't like that. I've listened to shows like that. And I'm like, it just feels rushed. It feels fake. A show, when I created the show, I wanted it to be something that was fun, laid back. We're just a bunch of people talking about a topic, whether it's tonight we're talking about comics, this weekend, Sunday's show, we're probably going to be talking about the difference between anime cons versus Comic Cons versus gaming conventions. And
that'll be fun.
And at one point, I think I did one of each, at least in a 6-week time span.
The only one I haven't really done is a gaming convention. I've been to a ton of comic and anime cons.
And with gaming cons, you get into like the more industry focused type stuff, like PAX or other, or I don't, E3 or things of that nature. And then you got the smaller, like tabletop focused.
Now,
I wonder, do people develop video games with Kickstarter money? Does that happen?
yes.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
It has happened. That being said, I've heard horror stories, far more horror stories about unsuccessful ones as opposed to successful ones.
Unsuccessful at raising funds or unsuccessful at coming through with the game with the money that they raised?
Coming through with the games.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Programming is extremely difficult, I imagine.
Having seen some of that, it is video game development. You need a team of people, and one or two people cannot design like a very big, expansive video game and expect to have it function.
And the only exception I have seen to that rule is a game that started off slow and then just blew up over the last couple of years, and that's Among Us. Because I've done research on that, and I've tried to get the creators of Among Us on the show and never heard back from them. But I know it was a team of 3 people that created the game Among Us before all the mods and stuff that people are doing now.
And I have not actually played that, but from everything I have seen, that's actually a fairly, at its core, fairly simple and not very graphics intensive, which is how they were able to do it.
Yep. But
love it.
It's got such a huge following, and I've played it. I think it would be much funner if I could play it through Discord or some way of chatting, because when you have to sit there and type everything out, it gets annoying. So I would rather watch people play it where they have proximity chat, where you can talk when you can hear people when you're close to them or whatnot. But I
mean, during the last election cycle, that was part of the news because politicians were playing it, trying to connect with the younger generation of voters.
AOC was one of them because I watched Corpse Husband and Valkyrie and Saikuno and Disguised Toast, a lot of the YouTubers who play Among Us, and she would join them for their games.
And one that she ended up not connecting with was Achievement Hunter. Because on their podcast, they actually one of them actually talked about that because they tried, but scheduling was not conducive. Yeah,
and I know there's actually a voice actress out there, Faye Mata, who is best known for the English voice of Aqua in Konosuba. Was playing Among Us, so she actually played with AOC during that campaign as well for a few games.
It's all very interesting to see, and I suppose that's really just a sign of how media has evolved, even in the past like 3, 4, 5 years.
Now, Shawn, with your experience of doing the comics and the writing and everything, how has social media helped you grow the knowledge of your books, your comics, and everything? Has it been a big help, or?
Yeah, I have to say I'm still learning because I was not a big social media user before, launching the comic business. And so I'm still trying to find my footing a bit. You can... It's hard to know exactly how you let me put it this way. It's so much easier for me when I'm in person. When I'm talking to someone at a convention, I really get a sense of who they are and what their interests are and whether they might be interested in one of the books or something like that. But it's harder on Facebook or on social media. So it seems like you're just kind of throwing a lot of stuff out there to see what people respond to. It feels more detached and a little more algorithmic, for lack of a better term. But I think that once again, it's just me. I may not be very good at working social media. But with that said, people do respond to certain posts. Actually, been just started posting on some of the Woodstock groups about wood steak, and I was tentative to do this because there's definitely this sense of, if you didn't go to Woodstock and you're not of that generation, it's not really what you, and if you're bringing something from the outside, like this story that really isn't, has not, isn't in any way connected with the real event. But once again, I think it's all about how you approach people and how you enter a group like that. But you have to be very careful because there are these groups out there that are very well established, and you don't want to just be crashing in trying to sell something. So it's hard to sort of find it, be respectful, make people aware of something they might enjoy without, I don't know. I'm not a very good salesman. I'm not pushy. So it's hard for me to navigate, truth be told.
And you say you're not a good salesman. We have about 5 minutes or so left on the show tonight. But before we let you go, we want to give you a chance to promote your comics yourself, the Kickstarter. We call this our shameless plugging section, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I will throw out a shameless plug. So I really hope and believe that what I've got are some good stories with good characters, compelling narratives. And so the Killing Machine, we've got 7 days left on Kickstarter. Come in at the recruit level for $10. You're going to walk away with 3 comics. And probably some free stickers or other things with it. So I think this will be a story. I'm really proud of the first issue. I think this will be a story that you will enjoy and want to come back for. And then we are going to launch, Woodsteak and Erotic in the next couple months. And once again, I think they're good, well-written stories. And so if you are looking, maybe you're not the biggest comic book fan in the world, but if you're looking for a compelling story with good characters that, is not, that is well done, I hope, since it's a shameless plug, I guess I can say it's well done, then come check us out and hopefully you'll find something you enjoy.
And what do they search on Kickstarter to find your?
Oh, just Killing Machine. If you just go to Kickstarter and search Killing Machine, it'll come right up. I think I'm the only Killing Machine on there right now.
Awesome.
And what looks to be our last, potentially our last comment of the night, HH has said, so glad they tuned into this one. Lots of good info.
Thank you, HH. Thanks for your great comments.
Yes, big thank you to HH for tuning in tonight. For those of you who are watching this after we record it, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. This Sunday, like I said, coming up, which will be February 13th, we are going to be doing a show where we're not going to have a guest. I think we're just going to be me, Angela, and Darren talking about the difference between different type of conventions, anime cons, the comic cons, the gaming cons, maybe throw some sci-fi in there because I've been to a few of those, maybe even some other types of, topic-related convention events, how they differ, what to expect.
And if anyone listening wants to ask questions to our Facebook page before that, feel free and we'll answer them on the air.
Exactly. And to find us on Facebook, just go to facebook.com/Anime-Zing Radio. Be sure to like the page.
Subscribe, do all that fun stuff because we like you.
Exactly. Like and subscribe on our YouTube channel if you're new here, because we have a goal. We want to hit at least 500 subscribers by the end of the year. We also have a giveaway. Once we hit the 200 subscriber mark, we will be giving away a guest co-host seat where one lucky subscriber will be sitting in the co-host seat for a future voice actor interview. The faster that we hit that mark, the sooner you have a choice, because we've got 3 very talented voice actors coming up. February 20th, we got Brianna Roberts is going to be joining us. March 6th, we have Danny Chambers coming back. For you fans of The Ancient Magus' Bride, you know her best as Chise. Also, we have Aaron Campbell will be joining us, who yesterday was announced as a guest for PucciCon, who we are proud to sponsor for 2022, and we are excited about getting out to the Pocono, Pennsylvania area to hang out with the folks at PucciCon. So definitely go check them out. That's going to be middle of May. I have it written down somewhere. I just got to find it. It's May 14th and 15th in the Pocono area at beautiful resort that they have up there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Come by, say hi. We'll have a table with Anime-Zing Radio. As we find more guest announcements from PucciCon, we will be sure to announce them on the show. Also, we have a couple of wonderful prizes that we've donated to PucciCon. The overall winner of the Masquerade will be a future guest on the show here. Also, one lucky winner will get a guest co-host spot for a voice actor interview from PucciCon as well. We love doing that. We love connecting the fans to their favorite voice actors. So,
and love giving me a substitute if I fall asleep.
So good things coming on down the road. Also, just a reminder, at the end of the month, February 26th, we are doing a special Saturday show instead of Sunday because I will not be around. We're going to have cosplayer Ben Ackley will be joining us. Also looking at the possibility of March 20th doing a cosplay roundtable. I put a post out on the Anime Boston social page and gotten a lot of interest. So we might get 3 or 4 of the cosplayers who have responded to come on and do a roundtable talking about the world of cosplay. But we are out of time. Once again, a big thank you, Shawn, for joining us tonight. It has been so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Big thank you, of course, to all of you, our wonderful viewers out there and listeners. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit that like button and subscribe. Help us reach the 200 goal so we can give away one lucky co-host seat to one of you awesome viewers. Also, thank you, Angela and Darren, for joining me tonight. I know it's unusual to be doing the Monday night shows, but we enjoy throwing these out there every now and then.
Always a good time.
Mm-hmm. You never know what you're going to learn.
So until Sunday, when we start talking conventions, have a wonderful week. Stay safe out there and enjoy the shows.